Hey there and welcome back to the studio. Today I'll be doing something a little bit different, doing a commentary on the PBD podcast, particularly as it pertains to Jordan Peterson's performance in his debate on Jubilee, because I noticed in the title it said Jordan Peterson Destroyed, which was an interesting way to hear them describe it. So I took a look at the debate, and I took a look at the way the PBD podcast covered it, and to me it was emblematic of how discussions tend to go off the rails, being guided more by people's personal opinions, emotions, and presuppositions than by the actual content of what a person is actually commenting on. So I've got the whole segment where the PBD home team is playing clips, going back to commentary, and I'll be in that horrible little rectangle on the side with the garbled audio, making comments where I look all chopped up and glitchy and whatever. But if you like the ethos of this channel and how certain things are covered in the audio world and stuff, you'll see where I'm coming from with it, and you may appreciate going through the process with me, even though this video is lengthy to say the least. To be clear, this video is not about defense or condemnation of anyone involved, whether it be the initial Jubilee debate, the religious people, Peterson, the atheists, PBD, all the rest of them on the podcast. This is not about an attack or defense on any front. This is simply me appealing to the public to take a look at this and see how far off topic everyone got. If we keep up this way, even with the greatest thinkers on earth having debates in front of millions of people who could benefit from watching the inner machinations of their mind, everything will fall to nothing. And that's not the world that I want to see going forward. So with that being said, let's take a look.
Next story I want to go to is Jordan Peterson. Rob, if you got this clip, I just want to get your reaction to it. Jordan Peterson, over the last 10 years, has gotten billions of views online. He's one of the most watched influencers. He'll put events together. Thousands of people will show up and pay to watch this man speak. He's had a lot of influence over young men. Wrote 12 Rules for Life that sold millions on top of millions of copies, has been very successful, made a lot of money. But they do this Jubilee thing that he sits down with this other young man. And, you know, look, kudos to anybody that goes here, because you're being targeted by 20 people that are all been researching to put you in your place and have an opportunity for a video like this that we don't know who you are, and all the eyeballs come and you get a bunch of attention, right? Here's him and Jordan Peterson speaking. Go ahead, Robin, play the clip.
PBD was talking about these people had all the time to research, but there's this presupposition that Jordan Peterson is a Christian, when I know he's been asked this question multiple times, and his clearest answer was he chooses to act as though God exists. I have never once heard him make the claim that he's a Christian. Never once. So the presupposition that he's a Christian is already getting the entire discussion off on the wrong foot. As a matter of fact, if you look at the title on this point that he's positing, that this man is coming up to debate with him, is everybody worships something even though they might not know it. This is not Jordan Peterson is a Christian, prove him wrong.
You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay, you're familiar.
Doctrines are very
how do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause
Christian or you're
I won't
not.
talk to you if you're a smartass.
Oh,
The idea is to try to get this win, but that's not done in good faith. If somebody makes an excellent point, then of course, it's going to evoke an emotional reaction from the crowd. But this guy's not making a point other than something about Mary, and he's already presupposing that he's a Christian. First of all, Christians, Protestant Christians, would not consider Catholics to be Christians. And I don't have a stake in this game. I'm not advocating for any side whatsoever. I'm just talking about doctrinally Christians believe that salvation is by grace through faith alone, not by works, so that you can't really boast about what you do. Whereas in Catholicism, there is a much more layered structure to how salvation is purported to be achieved. So there's works, and there's charity, and there's confession, and there's going for the Eucharist. There's a lot of different things. They also have the saints that they kind of pray to and through. They have Mary that they pray to and through. Whereas any Christian that I've known and any Christian doctrine that I've ever read, it's kind of like everything is through the name of Jesus, not through the name of anybody else, regardless of what they've done and how wonderful they could be and how necessary they were in the entire scope of the religion, or the faith, as somebody might not want to call it a religion. There's a lot of debate about what words are used, so just to be fair across the board, Jordan Peterson never claimed to be a Christian, and even if he did, it does not mean that he would fully understand the Catholic doctrine of Mary. So this is not really proving anything. And remember, this guy came up to debate the topic sentence, everybody worships something even though they might not know it. So far he's not been doing that.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
The title of the YouTube channel is something like Jubilee, and it's a platform by which somebody is debating somebody else over a specific posited point. In this case, everybody worships something even though they might not know it. This is not a win to discuss something completely other, get a confused look off the person, and then claim it as a victory. This is not about defending Peterson Christianity, this guy, or anybody else. Really, what concerns me is how people speak to each other in society. And when I look at this, I understand why nobody can get along, nobody can reach an agreement on anything, because there's not even a regard for proper debate or proper use of language.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
I don't know that I'd be with him. I would press the question, what does that mean, I'm quite nothing? In what way am I nothing? Because I don't know the doctrine of Mary, because I have attended a Catholic church and don't know the depth of all its principles. What is it that we're discussing here? Everybody worships something, whether they know it or not. Nothing was discussed to that point. So what are we talking about?
What do you think about that?
I mean, if I'm being real, I'm really disappointed. We got a guy who's helped millions to see value and order, discipline, family, tradition, and then you pull back on the one foundation that you come from, okay? He's lectured on biblical stories like he's Moses, and then the guy just asks you, are you a Christian? I don't care, Catholic, Protestant, are you a Christian? Because you've been claiming and you're preaching it that you are. Why have that moment? What are you scared of? Why? So now you've confused the shit. Tommy, you know what I mean? You can't talk about the power of the Bible and logos and Christianity and Jesus Christ and claim all this, and then when the moment happens, and I think that kid, whoever this kid is, won this freaking debate to where you have to say, I don't want to talk to you anymore, you lose it right there. Why don't you say that you're a Christian? What are you scared of?
Well,
Normally, when you're having an intellectual debate and you're making a point and a person says, I'm not talking to you anymore, and they leave the room, yes, that normally is a concession on that person's behalf because either they got too emotional to make a point when faced with the truth, or they didn't have any kind of valid answer. Well, that's probably why they got emotional. Or maybe they had a point and they got so emotional that they couldn't even grasp it anymore. But there's still an element of emotional dysregulation, which is, that's an admitted thing. You can see that. Everyone here has had a discussion with someone where the whole thing fell apart because someone got too emotional. In this case, though, Vinny is saying that Jordan Peterson is a Christian. Once again, a false premise. I understand his passion. And had Jordan Peterson professed to be Christian and then would not admit to it in front of somebody or in the face of a direct question, then that would be a violation of Christian principles. Yes. However, he has specifically never said that he was a Christian. And Vinny has brought up the point that he's changed many people's lives. He's giving lectures with obviously based on the Bible at this point. But when he's lecturing on the Bible, what he's really doing is he's trying to use archetypes that are within one of the most popular religious traditions to reach a broad group of people that maybe are not followers of something else which is more marginalized. What are the big three religions based on Abrahamic faith? You've got Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And like I said, in Christianity, it's okay, Catholics is one thing, Christians is another. But if you had to pool them all together, everyone that has at the very foundation what's known as the Old Testament is a large group of people. So if you're going to try to extrapolate philosophical values and fundamental archetypes of the human condition from something, why not pick a book that so many people in the world have agreed is a fundamental bedrock of, let's say, Western civilization? So yes, he's using the Bible as a starting point by which to share his ideas and try to show people that, look, these are common ideas that have been shared for a certain period of time amongst humanity, and now I'm going to imbue it with my background in psychology and morality, right? He did famously write the book Maps of Meaning. And just because you're using these books as a way to connect with people who otherwise wouldn't want to watch a clinical psychologist talk about something or a professor of something, maybe they feel it's over their head. It's like, oh, here's a guy speaking from biblical perspectives. So you can get religious people on board. My grandmother, for instance, all she does is watch like A&E murder mysteries. She's not going to read Maps of Meaning, but she ordered We Who Wrestle with God because she's a Catholic and it's something with God in the title. And maybe his interpretation of certain meta-narratives in that book will bring her to a deeper understanding of herself from the basic beginning level of where she's at as far as interpreting the world right now at the age of 89, when the body is failing and she's looking for meaning, and maybe it's going to deliver some value to her. So one thing about me is I have a clinical practice, and on Tuesdays, I'm at my office all day in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, and I work with Hasidic clients. So given that I have a background in different spiritual texts that I've read and learned and to some degree have understood, if I have a point that I'm trying to make to help a person psychologically through a situation that they're in at this point in time, and they come from a very strong religious background, I'm not going to start necessarily quoting Carl Jung and Rogers and all these different people who contributed things in the world of psychology. But I can draw on certain examples from the Torah that are relevant to these people's lives. That shouldn't be conflated with me being Jewish, professing to be Jewish. I'm not Jewish. Vinny's disappointment in Jordan Peterson would kind of be like if I had a half hour for lunch between clients and somebody came in and saw me eating a boar sausage and go, how could you eat boar sausage? You're supposed to be Jewish. With all the things you've said about Torah and Talmud and this, that, and the other thing, how could you possibly sit there now and eat boar meat? And now that's a win for that guy. First of all, there's no contest. Second of all, just because I'm referencing something that I feel can deliver a truth to you in a way that you'll understand doesn't mean that I am the advocate or representative of that truth. I'm using it as a medium by which we can have a conversation on common grounds, and I can help you understand something on your terms. That doesn't make me Jewish, and the fact that Jordan Peterson is doing a lot of biblical lectures doesn't necessarily make him any type of Christian, Catholic, Jew, Muslim, or otherwise. That's where I stand on that, and it's just phenomenal to me that this point is being missed by Vinny so far. I mean, I understand that Vinny is a Christian, he's passionate about it, and good for him. But what is making you suppose that Jordan Peterson is a Christian in the first place, other than the fact that he's given credence to certain texts and used them as a platform to share certain visions he has with the world about the human condition?
Funny is because originally when they uploaded this video on Jubilee, the title was One Christian versus 20 Atheists. Then they changed the title to Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question here is, was Jordan Peterson aware that the title was going to be One Christian versus 20 Atheists. If he was aware that that's how it was going to be marketed, then he would have to know that he's the Christian. This goes without saying. Or did somebody upload it with that title and then change it? Like, what was the actual title that was there in the first place? That would be very helpful to know before we start going through this whole process and falling down the rabbit hole, as they say. However, it must be reiterated that Jordan Peterson has never claimed to be a Christian, ever.
Hey, so you want me to say that one more time? So originally it was one Christian, which is who?
Jordan
Peterson versus 20 atheists. And then they changed it to Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists because he said, how do you know if I'm a Christian?
Wow.
I mean, that change took place. But Adam, how did you see this between Jordan Peterson and this young kid?
Yeah, only in the modern day of the internet and sound bites can a kid who's likely done nothing with his life, probably in college so far, come in and own one of the greatest philosophers, speakers, doctors of our time, Jordan Peterson.
Now, what Adam is saying here, that he's probably done nothing with his life, this is purely speculation. When I see that guy as a clinician, if he would come in and sit across from me, I would proceed with caution. Certain things in the face, in the body language, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to take that and make an absolute claim about it. It's just something I would notice on the way in. I think it's also a bit much to right away jump on the kid that he's never done anything and he's trying to own Peterson. Though his intention from the beginning was clearly combative from my professional standpoint. But that's neither here nor there. I'm mostly concerned. I want to get all of the excess side roads dissolved to just point out that when faced with a debate, we should stick to the topic at hand and deal with facts rather than emotions. This video of me speaking on this topic, this is the platform by which I'm trying to share all of that with you out there. That we should not be getting into these chaotic battles of ego, right? Stick to the topic at hand, keep it factual, stay focused. Adam is going now the other way. Oh, this guy has done nothing, right? I don't know about that. Maybe he hasn't. Probably a good chance based on his age and his combative nature that he hasn't. But once again, irrelevant for this discussion.
Jordan Peterson probably should have had a better answer. I don't know his religion. It's not for me to comment on. He is who he is. But this kid has gone famous now for owning Jordan Peterson. I would have loved to seen the rest of the discussion. I would love to see if there was any productivity of having a conversation like this. But for Jordan Peterson's his entire career to be, stumbled on by this kid who just wants to basically dunk on Jordan Peterson and say, you stand for nothing, or whatever he said.
No, he said, you're really nothing. And when I was watching this debate in full, when I saw that, I was like, okay, my first assumption about this guy was right. The flag that went up inside when I saw him sit down on the chair and how he was looking from the side the whole time, this was the moment where I went, okay, I was right on point with that guy. Not for the sake of being right, but as a person who's got a clinical practice, I like to know whether or not my instincts are oriented properly. And whatever I felt about this guy, just by his approach, was absolutely validated when he said that Peterson is really nothing.
Living today, where a kid can go famous and viral for basically dunking on a great thinker, when a great thinker doesn't necessarily want to argue with a meaningless child.
But you're assuming it, Adam, because Jesus Christ didn't mince words. In Matthew, chapter 10, verse 33, he said, but whoever denies me before men will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven. It's not a riddle. It's a line in the sand. You can't play neutral when it comes to Christ. And I don't care what moment he's having or how philosophical, and yes, he's a great mind, but Jesus Christ didn't suffer and die so we could treat faith like a philosophy class, because that's not how it is, Adam. Either you're all in or you're one of these sideline poop talkers, and I'm just not a fan of it.
Vinny would be 100% right if Peterson claimed to be a Christian. He never has. He didn't agree to abide by Christianity's laws because he never claimed to be a Christian in the first place. But from a Christian perspective, had he, Vinny would be 100% right. But we're once again having this discussion from the wrong perspective. And by wrong, I mean just inaccurate according to the facts. not morally wrong.
Tom, your thoughts?
I don't understand the premise. Is if he's not a Christian, then he doesn't have to.
He is a Christian.
right.
But when you're on the spot and you're saying it, why not say it? He says,
Tom, your thoughts?
I can't believe I'm saying this. No disrespect to Adam. But Adam is correct here. Why are you holding the thing if he's not a Christian? And Vinny says, but he is a Christian. Based on what, right? Just take a look at it, guys.
So I think Jordan Peterson missed a wonderful opportunity because, you know, what's interesting is if you're going to do a debate with people on anything, right? Anything, you know, baseball people 10 years ago debating about designated hitters, should it be in both leagues? If you go into a debate on anything at all and you hit the other person on the head, you're going to get nowhere. And when sharing about faith and when talking about faith, he missed an opportunity because this young man told him what he was thinking. He said,
by saying, let's for a German, bring a Jewish family to save. So wait.
I wouldn't be in that scenario. It's not
Lying could say.
not really, no.
Tens of thousands most of his career. He did what? He was a professor. He was a teacher.
instead you are. And he said, might I tell thing? And then you aren't going to get to do a debate.
If he's not a Christian, then he doesn't have to.
He is a Christian philosophy class, because that's not how it is, Adam. Either you're all in or you're one of these sideline poop talkers, and I'm just not a fan of it.
Tom, your thoughts?
I don't understand the premise. Is if he's not a Christian, then he doesn't have to.
He is a Christian.
No, he's not, though, Vinny. He's not. I mean, he's not said it. Maybe he's wrestling with it, but he's never declared that he's a Christian. This is the problem.
But when you're on the spot and you're saying it, why not say it? He says,
Tom, your thoughts?
He should answer.
So I think Jordan Peterson missed a wonderful opportunity because, you know, what's interesting is if you're going to do a debate with people on anything, right? Anything, you know, baseball people 10 years ago debating about designated hitters, should it be in both leagues? If you go into a debate on anything at all and you hit the other person on the head, you're going to get nowhere. And when sharing about faith and when talking about faith, he missed an opportunity because this young man told him what he was thinking. He said, aren't you concerned with, are you familiar with some of the doctrines of Catholicism? And all you have to say is, yes, I'm a Christian, and I understand the teachings of Jesus Christ, and I know why I believe them. Can you share with me what your foundation is and why you believe that?
Another major conflation. Yeah. All you have to say is, yes, I'm a Christian. Talk to some Christians and Catholics and see if Christians even consider Catholics to be aligned with their central core of faith. Because I'll tell you, a large number of them do not. Oh, aren't you a Catholic? Yes, I'm a Christian. All of this doesn't have to occur if a person's not a Christian in the first place. Tom, again, always there with the numbers. Words talk, numbers scream, is what you say all the time. How are you missing this? How are you conflating these 2 points?
That's a non-offensive question, asking the other person to level set. And then you can walk into apologetics and talk about the very beautiful message that is present. And there are many examples that are given in the Bible of how to debate this. Paul, the Apostle Paul, went to Rome, and when he was in Rome, he walked around and he found an altar, and it was, the Romans at that age were very superstitious. They had Roman gods for everything, and they had gods for why there was thunder and why there was rain and all kinds of other things. And he comes up to them, and because they're superstitious, maybe they missed one, they had the thing that said, an altar to the unknown God.
Now, that's a great point, because back in Rome, we may have found my ancestors who remember the premise that that guy came up to debate is that everyone worships something whether they know it or not. So my ancestors, who are not of a Judeo-Christian background, would have honored what they perceived God to be through the forces of nature. So yeah, statue towards the force of thunder and of rain and of wind and of earth and of fertility. And there was a tolerance there because there was an altar to the unknown deity. So if you were passing through there and none of those were part of your tradition, they understood their ignorance, that they didn't know everything about everything that happened in every belief structure in the world. So right there's an altar. You want to go, you want to make an offering, you want to do whatever you got to do, there's your spot there. Something for everyone, okay? And Tom is continuing to press the point that Peterson should have taken the guy, explained to him the beauty of Christianity and how all the stuff works, and given him basically like a soft proof within a short amount of time using apologetics or debate in favor of Christianity. But that is not what the topic was. Everybody worships something whether they know it or not, period. That's it. They put something as top priority that they're willing to sacrifice other things for the sake of. That's it, not Christianity. Tom.
So they're saying, and just in case we missed one, we don't want you to be upset. Here's your altar, and here's where we are. And he said, might I tell you about one you don't know? And the people were curious, and they engaged in debate, and they said many understood and believed. So when you have an opportunity like this, I think Jordan Peterson missed the boat.
Missed the boat to evangelize he's not stated to be part of.
What is the problem in saying, yes, I'm a Christian, and here's why I believe what I believe?
He's never said he's a Christian. He's never nailed down a belief system.
I'm interested in you. Why do you believe what you believe? Let's talk through a couple of these things. Instead, you set it all up, and the curiosity I had was it set up as a kind of an internet debate roundtable to get sparks and to bring on views. I don't know what the premise of it was. I'm not the producer, and I haven't really studied it, but this could have been done so much better for the benefit of the young man that was sitting there so that he could have understood.
To the topic of the debate, play the board, not the player. That's what we learned in chess. Play the board, not the player. Although later on, chess psychology, you can start playing games like that, but then this person could kind of feign being one way, then you try to play to his psychology, then he flips on you. Chess players can be very cunning and shrewd, and for the most part have a generally higher level of intelligence than, let's say, poker players or checker players. So when all else fails, just play the board. You know, there were several questions that were brought up in this debate. One of the statements that Peterson brought up that he was looking for an answer, he said that atheists refuse to believe in a thing that they can't define. So, for example, okay, an atheist doesn't believe in God. Define God. So basically, everyone who came up to the table at that point, all they had to do was not even give a correct definition of whatever God is, right? Their definition. So meaning when you come to this table and say, I don't believe in God, here's how I define God, and this I don't believe in. That's all they had to do. And nobody sat down and did it. So meaning for all the talking and all the arguing, no one actually took down that point that Jordan Peterson was making, that you're denying something that you can't define. And you should be able to at least define what it is, show some knowledge of this thing, and then say, based on my frame of reference for this particular thing, I don't believe in it. I reject it. But nobody came and did that. It all turned into something else. A lot of pushing and pulling on all the sides when all they had to do, the burden of proof was on them. He posited the statement. It's like kind of prove me wrong. Show me that you understand what it is that you reject. That wasn't addressed. This thing here, where it's saying that everybody worships something, whether they want to or not. Something gets to the top of their list of priorities that they use as a beacon by which they live their life and direct their aims. This was not C.S. Lewis trying to convince people to be Christians, and then when the guy got up there, he said, I don't want to handle it. It's not what happened, but that's the way it's being treated. And it's very surprising for these guys on the podcast, me at least.
I mean, what did he do most of his career? He did what? He was a professor. He was a teacher. And what kind of people did he deal with? Exactly like that kid. Think about what he taught. He dealt with kids like that. And he's probably sitting there profiling this kid and is like, dude, what are you talking about? You know how many tens of thousands of conversations I've had with someone like you? However, if you got a position, take the position. Rob, is this another one clip that happened from the same episode?
Yeah, from the same Jubilee.
Okay, let's watch this one here.
God.
What do you
Can you
mean
go
by
back a little bit? We didn't hear the first part. Yeah.
Do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said, you think it to be true.
All right, so if
What's
you
a belief?
believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
How would you define belief? Something you say?
Can I explain? Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my
No, you cannot believe it exists because the pen is in front of you. There's no use for belief in that situation. When you ask somebody if they believe in God, you have to define what you mean by believe, right? Because some people just say, like my grandmother, for instance, yeah, I believe in God. Okay, so little dinner time banter. Which one? The only one. Okay, that's clear, right? Ask how many people in the world, even people of the same faith, have their own version of that God in their head. Their own version, even though they all go to the same church, right? Like, oh yeah, I believe in God, and that's an image. That's a collection of data that they've assembled in their mind, called God, and said that they believe in it. And then the next guy is slightly different, next one slightly different, next one slightly different. And when you say believe, those people who are willing to give their lives, for example, using Christianity as the framework, if somebody was to hold a gun to a Christian's head and say, are you a Christian? And they know that by saying yes or admitting to being a Christian, they're going to be shot. They say that they're not, according to the scriptures that they believe, they're going to go to hell. So they have to martyr themselves. Christian, with the gun to the head, guy's supposed to say, yes, I am. Bang, heaven. That's the way it's supposed to work, okay? That means they really believe that by allowing their life to be extinguished, they're going on to an eternal life of bliss unimaginable, okay? That's a belief. When you ask somebody, do you believe in God? What do you mean by God? What do you mean by belief? Do you believe that God exists? Well, if we're talking about God as a governing, compelling idea that influences how a person or a group makes every decision in their life towards a precise aim, then you know what? God definitely exists in whatever form you think he does. Let's say you took 100 people and you told them that there was a deity, there was an almighty God that believed that if you tied your shoes in a double knot, you were going to hell forever. Therefore, you have to single knot your shoes all the time. And 100 people now go through their life never double knotting their shoes. In essence, whether or not that's a real character, they're behaving as though that exists. And when you say, what's causing them to do that, you could accurately say, they're God. So in that case, a made-up God exists if people are making decisions based on it. And if an actual God exists, then that's self-explanatory. So God kind of exists to the point of people worship something, whether they know it or not. There will always be some sort of purpose, the way people structure their life, that they're willing to sacrifice certain things in the aim of achieving whatever they believe this purpose to be, in which case it becomes their God. It becomes their object of worship, whether worship means bowing in front of it or just simply choosing to not eat the ice cream tonight because you want to lose a little bit of weight. Now, that is higher in the order of priorities than the satisfaction of eating the ice cream at midnight. Even a total atheist is putting that now as the thing that it's serving. You're serving that ideal at the expense of this short-term pleasure. So if we're talking about like that, yeah, there's God. Do you believe it? There's no need to believe it. I know it because I see people's behavior around. And I understand when I make decisions, there's always that thing which is above what I'm trying to achieve, greater than where I am now. So if that's what God means in your question, then yes, there is one. And no, I don't even need to believe it. I've seen it. Belief plays no role whatsoever. But to say that, oh, well, I believe the pencil is, it's like, no, that's disingenuous for sure. And Peterson was looking for clarity on that subject of, well, what do you mean by believe?
life, right? I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your
Don't be
life?
so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Would you lie to like save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
Now, what does that mean? I've thought about this a lot. Let's say I had made a tremendous amount of money and somebody went and captured my family and said, if you don't pay X amount of dollars, we're going to execute your family. So would I pay the money? Now, I'm not a greedy person, but I am someone who likes to think about things, even things that are uncomfortable, because I find that going through that space allows you to understand yourself better for a lot of decisions that may come up in the future, even if it's not the expression of such an extreme example, but the principles are based or rooted in such an example. So, okay, if you don't do X, we're going to execute your family. My first instinct is to say, if you were willing to kidnap my family so that you would gain an undue profit, an unearned profit at the expense of my hands, why would I trust that if I give you this money, you're going to now suddenly become a person of your word? So meaning, would you lie to save your, it's like, would I give the money to save them? No, because you've already set up a situation where I can't trust you. And I've already, in fairness, dropped the ball to let this happen to my family. Like, where was I? What was I not paying attention to? What didn't I realize that I was doing that would make me a target to have my family taken ransom? Or if it's just the sheer fact that I became famous and wealthy, I could assume that I would be a target, and then I should put certain measures in place to prevent such a thing from happening. Not like, oh, once you're there, would you do it? It's like, well, once I'm there, I probably made a lot of mistakes to get there, and I don't know. Maybe now it comes down to the lesser of the evils, but here, as far as giving the money, it's like, if I knew that I could take the person's word for it, here's the money, give my family back, it cost me something that I could always re-earn. But if a person's willing to do that, and they're like, okay, we'll give the family back if you give us the money, it's like, why would I trust you? I'd sooner say, you know what, you got the wrong number. Now they're faced with a problem. They can kill them, now be guilty of murder and be on the run and still not have the money. Or they could just send them back because they're not going to get anywhere. Understand? But if they're going to now kill them and have no chance of getting the money, they've only made their situation worse. I'm at a loss the minute they were kidnapped. As soon as they're kidnapped, it's like, shoot the hostage, take it out of the equation. Now you've got no leverage again. Now what do you want? Extreme example, but this is where I believe Jordan Peterson's coming from when he starts talking about, I wouldn't be there in the first place and so on and so forth, or in order to get there, I would have had to make a lot of mistakes, which from a thinking person's perspective, this is the way you would organize this information or interpret the question.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
And I'm guessing by sin, he's talking about that context from his lectures, the idea of missing the mark continuously, not necessarily the biblical definition of sin, but the idea of missing the target, and that you've missed the target multiple times to wind up there, rather than a moral judgment that you're steeped in sin. Although Peterson does look to be getting a bit perturbed by the line of questioning, and maybe with his squint and body language is being a bit moralistic. But if we have to go by the words and how he normally defines what sin is, then that would be where he's coming from, which is that you've effectively missed the mark many times in order to wind up there.
I'll give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them,
example.
would you lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical and it's not answerable.
Hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like that because
Did
it's
you eat
fun.
today? Did you
Don't
eat today?
play games.
I'm not playing games. I'm just
Yes,
asking
you
if you
are.
ate it.
I just told you
Hypothetical.
I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time
What I have to tell you is that and watch this debate in full, because this vertical horse blinder version of the video is not the entire debate. And when he said don't play games, there was something cut out in between. What he said is, you are setting up a hypothetical situation where you're backing me into a corner by first putting so many restrictions, like, okay, you're here, you're here, you're here. Now, would you do this? And as a person who's taught martial arts for years, first class I taught, when I was 12, I used to teach rape prevention. That was one of the classes that I taught in a specific martial arts dojo, and that was on Saturdays. I used to go there. I used to train during the week, and part of how I would compensate for the money that I didn't have was to teach this class to girls age maybe 13 through 16, something like that, on Saturday mornings. And for me, Saturday morning is like noon. So on Saturday mornings, I would teach this. And so that was when I first started teaching martial arts. But over the years, I've taught Wing Chun, I've taught System, I've taught a lot of different things. And inevitably, you get somebody who comes to you and says, oh, you teach martial arts. Okay, what would you do if you had no arms and no legs and your shoelaces were tied together and you had no eyeballs, they were stabbed out with barbecue forks, and 6 Afghani terrorists surrounded you and held guns to you, and one guy had a bayonet in your back? How do you defend yourself? It's like, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but the idea is that it starts out with like, okay, would you do the guy punch like this? What if he punched like that? What if he had a knife? What if he had 2 knives? What if he had 2 knives that shot bullets? What if the knives were electrified? And basically, you could fast forward the whole thing to, okay, you can't do anything. And then the guy goes, see, martial arts doesn't work. So this guy was giving the Nazi Germany premise much in the same way that somebody that just says, you know what, I don't want to study martial arts. I don't want to have to do anything when I could do nothing. So let me prove to myself that this guy who teaches martial arts will be in a situation where he can't do anything. It's like, okay, yeah, fine. Like, but that's just keep in mind that that's the aim. And this guy's aim, and don't take my word for it, watch the debate. This guy's aim was to paint him into a corner to where Peterson would just have to say, yeah, you're right. That's it. But only by crafting a hypothetical that bypasses all of the different decisions and steps that would get you into the hypothetical in the first place. And as an analytical person, it just doesn't compute, because it's like, no, don't assume that I'm going to be in a specific situation that you might get into, because maybe you're not thinking of all the steps like I might be thinking of all the steps, because I would do everything to not be there in the first place. And that could mean not be there physically or not be there in spirit or mentally. It doesn't mean because he's like, oh, what if you were born there? Okay, if I was born, I would be there. But then there's other things at play. Or sometimes, you know, in my therapy practice, somebody goes, what would you do if you were me? Well, if I was you, I'd do the exact same thing that you're doing, and I would come to see me and ask what's going on, right? I can't both be you and think like me. If I'm you, I'm you. So nothing is going to change, right? So that's where he was coming from with that. Once again, not an apologist for Peterson. I'm trying to be an apologist for civilized debate and sticking to the topic and not whatever this is supposed to be.
You've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect people that you care about, like there could be a Jewish friend that you have and you want to protect them.
I think you should
have
just
them
give
in your
up on
attic.
that line of questioning.
But like, okay, again, you're not answering this hypothetical because you know it shows that you clearly would lie to save
I'm
someone's life.
answering it in
Obviously,
a
that's
manner
not what
you
truth
don't
is.
find acceptable.
It's true. He's answering it in a manner that he doesn't find acceptable because he's rejecting his premise from the onset. Because the way that the premise is framed can only derive the answer that the guy's looking for. Watch the full debate. Don't take my word for it, really. Just look at it with an open mind. And keep in mind that this is not a pro or anti-Peterson or channel or pro or anti-PBD podcast. This is just about having a rational debate, because the more we can do that, the better we're all going to get along. So think about that. Remember that that's king here. This is our objective, what I'm trying to present to you on the channel today.
Obviously, because I care about truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously, right? Logically, because that's
No.
already happened. Like, that's in the past. You don't have a time travel device.
I don't get the argument. So wait a minute. The kid is making a point, Pat, by saying, let's say you were a German person in Germany during Nazi Germany, and you're harboring a Jewish family to save them. That's a very hypothetical. But Jordan Peterson's argument is, I would never put myself in that situation. No, he's missing the point completely. He's saying, what if you were that German family? If it doesn't make. He's not making any sense in that argument.
You're missing the point, with all due respect. With all due respect, you're missing the point. Because before we were talking about claiming Christ, whether something's going to happen to you or not, right? So that means kind of tell the truth at all costs. The question is, would Jesus have lied if he was in Nazi Germany? If Jesus was in Nazi Germany and he was hiding a Jewish family, would he have lied? Because then that would have been a sin, and then he wouldn't be sinless and blameless. You see, this is why hypotheticals are a problem. Because once you set up a hypothetical like that, then you're just hunting for one particular outcome. You're not trying to get an answer. And the hypothetical doesn't exist. That position is untenable. You're creating an untenable position. If you were attacked by Somali pirates and you had no head, what would you do?
I understand the argument he was making.
Yeah, what the kid was trying to do was basically called the sin entrapment. And he's trying to get him to admit that he would lie. And he said, oh, so lying is a sin, so you have to lie to do this or that. Whereas you're talking about being faced with great evil. And if you read in the Old Testament, there is an example of a woman who lied to Pharaoh's hitmen and sent them off in the wrong direction so that other people could proceed on God's mission over here.
Basically, what it's doing now, taking things from Torah and superimposing them onto Christianity, which supposedly they're a continuum. But there are specific ethical things that went in the Old Testament that no longer went in the New Testament. A lot of the argument for the validity of the New Testament is how many people were crucified or suffered awful deaths for not denying Christ. And they say, well, if it was made up, why would these people have allowed themselves to be destroyed in such a gruesome manner for the sake of their belief, right? So meaning they told the truth no matter what it meant, who got killed, whatever. But now on the other side of it, it's like, well, there was a lot of evil going on, so if you lied to save them, then all of a sudden it's good. So basically, God put them in the double bind, because this is a very binary faith. This is not about relativism. This faith is not about relativism. And I'm not coming from the perspective of being an advocate or a adversary of the faith. I'm just saying the way that it is and the way that it's written doctrinally. So effectively, what you're saying is that God set up a situation where the only right answer was to use the devil's tools to get out of it. If I'm a Christian, I'm not buying that. It's like there's always supposed to be a way out, and there's a thing in biblical text that says that God will never test you past the point that you could handle. And there's a presupposition, the point that you could handle without sinning. This is where I'm pointing out that these people purporting to be Christian and superimposing their Christian values on Jordan Peterson are at the same time contradicting their own beliefs.
So would I have lied about people being in the attic? Yeah, you have Schindler and you have Anne Frank, and you have all the stories of everything, what happened over there. And the kid was, I feel like, trying to put this in a corner, but then Jordan Peterson was almost kind of losing his composure and losing his patience. And I kind of agree with what you said a few minutes ago, Pat. It's like, I have seen, you are example number 6, and I have seen so many of you kids who are example number 6, and I'm not even going to listen to it.
Yeah, and losing patience because, once again, this was not the premise that was to be debated at all. We're totally off topic. See, that keeps getting lost here. Every time they clip to the video, like especially on this one with the stupid rectangular view, it doesn't even have the premise that's supposed to be debated written on top. So it's easy to get sidetracked because, remember, this is supposed to be a debate about very specific pointed claims.
No, you know what? There's a great verse in the Bible, and it says how Jesus put his hand on a man, and it said Jesus sighed because he was tired. But you know what he did that day? He still did what he was intended to do, and he healed the guy. But it said he sighed, and you could just see him going,
I could see that, but the same way that the guy could heal the man of whatever crazy thing that he was suffering from, that I guarantee you was more than being tired. He could have first breathed the breath of life or whatever magic air or whatever he could have done to make himself less tired and then healed the guy so that he's not given that sigh of like a passive aggressive person walking around the house first, so that you know that he's already healing this guy of who knows what. Maybe he's the guy that was attacked with no head and the no arms and no legs and everything, and he put a head and arms and legs back on him so he could answer the martial arts question once and for all. right? But he could make himself less tired before doing that, probably like this. Much easier than it is to lay hands on somebody else and make them less tired. It's like there's so many things that we're just blowing right past and then going, okay, now let's start from here.
Healed. It means he was tired and there's a lot going on in life. And what I think's going on there, it appeared that Jordan Peterson was out of patience. You kind of lost his composure a little bit. And at a time where you really need to call on the peace of God so that you can present these things to people who are doubters and see if you can win, not win a point. It's not about winning or losing, but maybe bring them to a level of understanding or bring something forward to them because they came in armed to kind of point you in one or two directions. And guess what? That's fine.
Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not the evangelism mission. It's not a revival tent. The whole point was not to convert these people to Christianity, to a faith that this man never said that he was a proponent of.
So, Jordan Peterson, this moral question of whether you should lie to save a life, whether you're in Nazi Germany or whether you're in modern day America, preserving life and saving a life overrides all other perceived sins by far.
What if it's to save your own life, denying Christ? I ask that to Christians. I don't need to either accept or deny him, but I'm asking you that, right? Think about this. Think about the where are you coming from here in this argument?
So to me, it's not even a question. Yes, you lie, cheat, and steal to save your kid's life, to save your wife's life, to save your own life. It's a non-starter for me. Yes, you lie in that case. Just like Oskar Schindler lied thousands of times to save thousands of lives. It's a non-question to me.
Beginning of, because this book is a work of fiction. Not to take anything away from what his point is, but let's, we're getting further and further from what the actual issue is. Everybody's lost the thread. I'm just trying to stay on the thread of this whole thing is happening because nobody is looking at where this is coming from. Everybody is superimposing their own beliefs and their own prejudices and then trying to derive whether or not the right thing was being done or not based on a false premise. You've got to see that by now. I know I'm really pushing on this point, but it's like having good conversations. It's like in my life, it's the most important thing I can engage in with anyone. I'm perfectly happy here in this studio or out in the woods completely by myself. But when I am going to engage with people, I don't want to have engagements like this where I'm talking about one thing and then they're winning an argument about some totally different made up topic that's swirling around in their head and they become deaf to hear any point of reason anymore. I always feel like one day, I'll be in front of a jury and it's like nobody's going to get it because everybody's just going to hear their own story and that's just going to be the end of it, And I don't even know that I mean that literally. It just seems inevitable. And this podcast for me is a direct representation of everything that I fear happening, where you're just doing something with good intentions and nobody wants to see anything but their own ideas.
As far as what Jordan Peterson is doing, I don't know if this is a good look for him or a bad look. I think it's an obvious bad look for someone who's basically made a name for himself over decades to basically be dismantled by a group of young, pompous, freaking atheists. Cool. But then on the bright side, there's going to be an entire new audience of teenagers and 20-somethings who go, who is this guy, Jordan Peterson? And they're going to find out about his books, and they're going to find out about his speeches, and they're going to find out about what he believes. So he almost needs to, in my humble opinion, reinvent himself for the modern Gen Z culture. Because everyone who is in their 30s and above has heard of Jordan Peterson, in my perception. So Jordan is a very smart but also emotional man. I've seen him cry on camera too many times to mention. PBD, I know you've had an experience with this. So I don't know what he's dealing with right now, but he's one of the greats. He's one of the GOATs, especially in the modern internet podcast culture. And I wish him the best.
But the question was, Adam, twice. And yes, these are atheists. And number one, you know what you're getting into. You don't go to a wedgie contest and then you get a wedgie and you're like, what the hell's going on? He's going to a debate with atheists. And if you're going to claim you're a Christian,
Which he didn't.
he'll say things like, I act as if God exists. I'm afraid he might exist. That's not a confession of faith. That's a hedge bet. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be preacher.
Correct. That is not a confession of faith. I really don't even know what a hedge bet is, but I don't even know why the thing is called 401k or a lot of other stuff that at my age, a lot of people know about and care about. But what I will tell you is that, yes, that has been Jordan Peterson's claim. I act as though God exists, which brings me back to the point that I made before, that if a whole bunch of people are going to act in such a manner as though some governing meta principle is what they look to orient their lives, that whether or not a physical thing like that exists or not, it effectively exists because you can see its effect. Almost like the way a lot of philosophers would say, like, well, you can't see the wind, you see the effect of the wind, so you know the wind exists. So if all the people are bowing and facing east, 2 billion of them a day, whether there's literally something there or not, there is something there, because the aggregate, the collective mental power of all of these people is being unified towards that direction. So that event is happening, and that event can only happen if that thing exists, even if it's only within those people's minds. It's not an evasive maneuver. He can only say what he honestly believes, and that is, I act as though God exists, period. And by God, it means conscience, as he defined it in this debate. If you'll go and watch it yourself, I really encourage you to do it, but watch the topic. They always have the topic written right across the top of the screen. No matter what road it starts going down or how emotional you feel like you might start getting, keep looking back to the top of the screen and see what the question is, and ask yourself honestly, is anybody even addressing this? There was one girl in there, did very good, Zena. She was up twice. This black girl, Zena, was the most articulate, had the ideas put together, and was respectful and was willing to engage with him in the spirit of play, in the Rogerian spirit of play, going forward and trying to, as Peterson would say, play an iteration of games across time. Play in such a way that you would want to get together and play again, not to just dominate this game at the expense of all other possible future games. So, yeah, Zena was doing very well, at least in discussion, but everyone fell short of sticking to the topic sentence, the statement, the point that was meant to be debated.
Guy, you know what I mean? I'm not talking the talk, I'm walking the walk, and I'm trying to live that life, and I'm trying to be a better person. If you're going to be that guy, say it, admit it, okay? I'm a Christian, and that's it, Tom. There's no ifs, ands, or what's about it. I'm not as knowledgeable as you. I'm not as smart and philosophical as Jordan Peterson. But Adam, this isn't a sideline thing, bro. When it comes to Christ, you're either all in if you believe in Him and you are a Christian. Either you're all in or you're not. There's none of this. Oh, well, these people, I'm gonna hang out with them. I'm gonna be over here. No, I don't. It's not it.
Yes, you're a Christian. You're a Christian, and point.
Yeah, no, to me, he looks upset. He looks agitated. He looks annoyed. And by the way, happens to many of us when you're sitting in a place like that. And, you're not going to be a robot. Even when Trump was asking the question, saying, hey, so what are you going to be doing if Putin doesn't listen? You think I'm going to tell you? You think I'm going to tell you fake news? Nobody hears a machine and a robot. However, in a situation like that, when you're sitting with someone in your mind trying to debate an atheist, like, I don't know how long it's going to take for this guy to realize it, because typically a faith is a experience of life, some things happening to you and going through a journey. I mean, you saw a story recently that talks about Joe Rogan's been going to church.
Oh, beautiful.
What do you mean Joe Rogan's been going to church? Yeah, Joe Rogan's been going to church. I think this happened after, Wes Huff, you were telling me yesterday with ex-atheists. Joe Rogan makes major life changes after Revelations on Podcast Sparks, resurgence of Christianity. How did that happen? Did that happen accidentally? Did that happen to a 22-year-old man? You think Joe's had a lot of deep conversations with a lot of powerful people around the world and met a lot of weird people? You think the best podcast Joe Rogan's ever done are the podcasts that you've seen on Spotify or Apple or YouTube? No, the best podcasts Joe Rogan's ever done were never recorded, were never televised, were never put on a outfit. You don't think he's had enough people that are on the atheist side try to convince him otherwise? Why is he not looking at it at this age? He's had the most money he's ever had. It's not like he is, going through something. He's famous, he's got money, his family, everything's good, and you're going through that. So this process of a person thinking they know it all when they're 23 years old, coming out of college, getting a tattoo that says whatever on it with the little, I don't know if you saw that little fatty that had a tattoo there. You see these types of things that happen, and then you're like, you know what? One day I'm going to grow out of it. I'll never forget. I'm at my Army unit. I'm there at the tattoo shop, about to get a tattoo of a cobra on my chest.
Yes.
And I'm like, man, I want to get this cobra. Why do you want to get a cobra? Because my unit at 228 Fort Jackson was called the Cobras. And it's like, it's going to cost you $200. I'm like, dude, I only got 80. I can't do it. You realize if I had an additional $120, I would have had a cobra tattooed on my chest.
That would have been sick, Pat.
That would have not been sick. I would have been sitting here explaining myself why.
I would have slithered at you.
Yeah, but you know what the moral of the story is? When you're young, you do some dumb shit and you think you know it all.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes life to really beat the living crap out of you to grow up and say, maybe I got to start looking at some of this stuff. Maybe I have to realize that, how did this kid happen?
I just told my 16-year-old son that he's doing very well. He's building certain things, he's got certain integrity, but the one thing that he's missing is the going through a world of hurt. And so I don't want to go through a world of hurt. I don't want to wind up like I said. Believe me, it's not a question of whether you'll go through the world of hurt. It's which world of hurt you'll go through and how you'll conduct yourself through it that determines how you'll come out of it and if it makes you better and sets you straight. But now, and here's PBD saying the same thing.
This is a full-on miracle. Go watch a couple deliveries and see what takes place and what God does. Go through life and experience some of the things. You realize, maybe I don't know it all, man. Maybe this, whole thing about, the only thing I know is that I know nothing. Like the more you're growing up, I think Socrates said that on his deathbed, if I'm not mistaken. We're all learning. We're all getting better, just like these 20 people, as well as Jordan Peterson. He's also going through it as well. And who knows what he's going through. But this definitely, when you do something like this, I don't know if losing your cool. By the way, you know how simple this could be? We had a rule in our office. Say you're giving a speech today to 50 people that are coming to us to do business with us. Say Adam's giving a speech. You know what the rule was?
What?
Whoever's the speaker that's speaking to guests and clients today, no one go tell him bad news before he hits the stage. We had a basic rule. Like, let's just say something very bad happened. It's like, don't go. Why'd you give him bad news?
Yeah, it ruins the flow.
And then he gets on stage and he's pissed off. Something bad could have happened literally 30 minutes before he went in there.
You're right.
Pissed him off,
You're
and
right.
mom called him, wife called him, somebody called him, and he got pissed off going in there like, you know what the fuck? And then he puts it on those people. No one knows. Anyways, you're a professional. You should be above it. Let's move to the next story. I think, Adam, you were going to ask something?
They had one of these podcasts. They had an Andrew Tate, somebody like that on, and yeah, it was him, and he was talking about training for a fight, and he was living with a girl who started bothering him about the toilet seat when he was fasting and training and everything. He's like, now you're going to bring that up about the toilet seat? And he made a whole big thing, and then he's like, you know what, now I want you out of the house. This is not an advertisement for that guy. This is just about getting bad news right before you go in to do something important. But I'm not blowing it off on that. I would really be kind of done with it that these people weren't sticking to the topic. If anything, rather than getting emotional and following them into the weeds, I would say, listen, we could discuss a lot of things, and I'm sure it would be interesting, but my primary point was this. So let's discuss this now for the sake of this show, of this exercise, and then we can always discuss something else later. But right now, the topic is this. What do you have to say about it? And just stick with that. That's it. Just stick to the topic. And we're not even here to begin with if the topic was stuck to.
I know this will go real quick, but one of the greatest things PBD has ever done to me is say, Adam, get closer to God. And whatever religion you are, I love what you say about, getting married is hard. Not getting married is riskier, is harder. Not having kids is risky. Not having kids is riskier. Not following God is risky. Not believing in God is riskier. My question is this. because I've moved in this direction. I've seen Vinny move in this direction, and I know Tom has changed lives. For followers of Christ, my question is this. Remember when I went to the Jerusalem and I went to the Armenian church?
Yep.
And I sent you those videos, and then I got you the gifts from Jerusalem, from the Armenian church. It had me thinking. I said, man, like, all right, what's the difference between the Armenian church and the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox? And you know, I went to high school in Miami, and it was a Presbyterian high school.
Much more than can be discussed in the context of the podcast or this commentary.
And then I have friends who are Mormon and Protestant, Evangelical, Lutheran, Methodist, Anglican. And these are just the names I'm thinking of. Jehovah's Witness. In Egypt, there's Coptic Christians, Anglican, Baptist. Isn't it all just you have to be a follower of Christ if you're a Christian? Why are there so many different sects to Christianity?
You're asking me the question?
I'm asking just the general question is, maybe Jordan Peterson isn't a quote-unquote Christian. He's just a believer in God.
You nailed it. And the question is, what do you mean by believe? And what do you mean by God? Ask him, have him define it. That's it. There's no failure here, other than the failure to have civil discourse and stick to the topic at hand.
So that's my question to the group. What's the difference with all these religions, and does it have to be partitioned into all these different segments? Aren't you just supposed to be a follower of Christ? Isn't that the whole conversation?
I think now you're going to, you know, we believe the baptism is under what we believe it's with the drop of the water. No, we believe it's this, and we believe it's these, you know, changes that they make on small things that they add. Some of them have more rituals than others, and there's a very much of a high retention rate to a organization that causes their members to have rituals versus those who don't, because if it's rituals, you're thinking about it more than another faith is thinking about it. So the other faith that's not thinking about it, the other sect that's not thinking about it as much, they're not as disciplined.
True. In that case, the ritual is an extension of the body of God, to define God as we were speaking of earlier, which is not my definitive stance. It's just putting it out there, food for thought.
Some Muslims, you know, no matter what's going on, they're praying. Some of them are praying God knows how many times a day. That forces you to be more disciplined, to be thinking about your God, to be thinking about your faith. So that's a whole different topic. That's a 2-3 hour podcast that I don't
understand
think.
that.
Yeah, I don't think it's something we need to get into, but I think...
And I get that, but maybe that's what Jordan Peterson was thinking, is don't define me by a specific...
I get that, but if you're sitting with that audience, you have to sit there and, like, let's just say if I sat down and there's 20 of the guys and we're talking business. Well, you know, capitalism, all they care about is this. Have you ever started a business? I have. How many employees do you have? Who has ever quit on you, stolen from you? Nobody ever. You haven't ever built a business yet. You're small.
You're a business owner. You never claim to be a Christian. Difference, right? If it's business owners versus non-business owners, then this is a perfect analogy. But it's not. It isn't. It's X person versus atheists. And the idea is to challenge atheism by pointing out that to be an atheist, it requires a degree of faith. And it also requires you to define what it is that you are rejecting. And nobody has done that either. So if you have a statement which is undefined, it's basically, it cancels itself. It doesn't exist. It's words without meaning. And that's what we're talking about here.
That a moment of conversation versus who, do you have a job? Yes. Who pays you? Boom. What company is it? Boom. Who was the founder? You think they lost? Let's go look them up right now. You think that person went through a divorce? You think that person went through some challenges? I think it's got to be that giving the perspective versus automatically jumping to conclusion, losing patience, to now not allow them to be sitting there saying, wow, you know what I like the way he handled me, that he got me to think about it. You know, it's like that one video. What is that one video we show where this man keeps going to this man that's talking about Jesus loves you. Shut the fuck up. Have you guys ever seen this clip?
With the black guy?
Yeah. Homeless guy. I think, did we show this on the podcast a couple weeks ago? Rob, did we show this on the podcast? Oh my God, you have to see this thing. Oh, I almost don't want to even show it because he's disrespecting him the entire time. Does he use some choice words, Vinny? I think he used some choice words.
He does a couple, but they might have bleeped it out. I'm helping to look. So yeah,
then all of a sudden, you see, he asks him, "Hey man, can I just pray for you? Can I just pray for you? You mind if I pray for you? Let me pray for you."
And it's silent.
And then eventually, the white man is probably in his mid-50s, the mid-40s. I don't know how old he is.
He looks a little bit younger.
You showed me this clip. If you can't find it, let me. Maybe Humberto's texting us saying that he found it.
Story for evangelism and pointing out, if you want to call it, at least in their perspective, virtues of Christianity, to go and proselytize. But once again, we're getting thrown off the road. This is not what the debate was meant to accomplish. This story, albeit an endearing one, and the guy was nasty, and then another person prayed, and then they were friendly and respected each other, fine. But that wasn't Peterson's role here. So him falling short of a role that he was never meant to be in, to me, it's not a point. Not making the point. We're just, once again, superimposing one idea over another, and the two are missing each other drastically.
Now, if you find it, we'll show it. You text it to me somewhere, but it was great. Anyways, the moral of the story is, at the end of it, the guy says, "Can I just pray for you?" And he says, "You know what? I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that he just dropped a prayer for me. It was a great exercise." Anyways, okay, if you find it, we'll show it. If not, I'm going to move on to the next story. Okay. Next story here is George Floyd.
Well, that's it. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, and maybe we'll have a discussion. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.